You think that once an attacker beats the staircase traps, they're finally safe? Wrong. A medieval castle is a chain of death traps with no intermission. Engineers built drawbridges not only to lift, but to collapse on command, and the moat you picture as sparkling water was often the most revolting biological dump in history. Every step toward the gate was a stress test. Narrow spaces, slick surfaces, and an echoing roar off the stone that kicked your heartbeat off tempo. You thought you were entering a house. Really, you'd only reached the rim of a killing machine powered by levers, counterweights, and, yes, stench. In this third part of our 100 Fact series, we're focusing on the castle's outer defensive layers, the exact place where clever engineering mates with calculated cruelty. From instant drop bridges to dry moats seeded with spikes and human waste, you'll see that assaulting a fortress wasn't only dangerous, it was nauseating. And even if you slogged through mud, pits, and traps, the halls ahead still had walls with ears, echo chambers, whispering galleries, and stone-built social surveillance that let the Lord eavesdrop on drama at the gate. If you're ready, strap the helmet, hold your breath, and step forward. Most drawbridges merely go up and down, but smarter medieval engineers built two-faced versions with sections that could snap out from under you. They tuned lever ratios, so a neat tug from a hidden winch room could release a locking pawl and make the bridge's middle hinge down like a bear trap. When a mass of enemies surged forward, the defenders pulled the concealed lever, and without warning, the center gave way. No countdown, no warning light, just the rasp of timbers, the growl of chains, and a mouth of empty air under your boots. Some bridges were even sanded smooth to ensure a dignified glide straight into disaster. Shiny plate harness turned into a waterslide accessory the moment the angle changed. That single motion transformed a knight's glorious charge into an uncontrolled toboggan ride into the moat. At Caerphilly Castle, carpentry scars, mortise patterns, and wear on fittings suggest a drop mechanism that could trigger in under 2 seconds, barely time to swear. Picture a ranked line of heavy horse, shields touching, suddenly collapsing into a heap of tin. The close-up formation that looks impressive on parade becomes a liability when momentum turns traitor. If you caught the lip by luck, you still dangled between arrow rain and boiling oil from above. If you didn't, condolences the bottom was calling your name. The collapse, though, is only the first cut. Waiting beyond is a murder box, a tight stone capsule staged to grind the fight out of anyone who survived the drop. Cleverness peaked when that drop bridge couples with a portcullis. The attacker bolts across, a front portcullis slams down in their face, and almost at once a second iron grate crashes behind, corralling them in a stone throat between the outer and inner gates. The lattice is studded with downward spikes. The space is tight enough to feel like a cage. The air is rich with the smell of leather, sweat, and metal oil. Panic swells with each drip of resin from the torches. Once you're trapped in the murder box, you are a live target. The ceiling above hides murder holes. The embrasures along the flanks give crossfire angles you can't answer. Defenders pour arrows, drop stones, and tip scalding water, hot sand, or burning oil until the scrum below stops moving. Plate armor that shielded you moments ago becomes a simmering pot. Heat finds every seam, turning your breath into an ordeal. Some gatehouses even ran narrow slots in the sidewalls, so spears could stab in at belly height. There's no cavalry rescue here, only arithmetic with no mercy. Tight volume plus heavy fire equals end credits. Some castles pushed both the psychological and physical grind to the level of art. Harlech is a textbook, a layered labyrinth that makes you pay for each step you manage to keep. Harlech Castle escalated gate stacked on gate into a doctrine. 6 sequential obstacles guard the approach. Multiple drawbridges, multiple portcullises, multiple heavy doors, and dogleg corridors, a lock that closes one tooth at a time as you pass through it. You don't get through a gate. The gate eats you, layer by layer. Every segment has its own crisscross fire. Every bend is a kill pocket for anyone who doesn't know the plan. Chains hum like a choir, and each clink of a rivet on stone sounds like a second ticking off your life. Storming the entrance becomes a lethal obstacle course. You climb, duck, squeeze, brace, then do it again, weaker each lap. The floor pitches wrong, gravel skates underfoot, and the walls rear higher as visibility shrinks. At every checkpoint, One wrong choice is a bloody one. The whole sequence is designed to drag out time. Bows steady, oil boils, reinforcements form up in the inner ward. You brought an army? Harlech reduces it to single file, then to single victims. Even if you beat the gatehouse game, the moat is still ahead. And here's the surprise. In many fortresses, the moat contained no water at all. A water moat sounds chic until you maintain it. You need a steady source, a reliable outlet, protection against freezing, algae blooms, floods, mosquitoes. The upkeep eats people and money. The cheaper, nastier answer is a deep, wide ditch with steep walls that you seed with horrors. A dry moat isn't a budget knockoff of the real thing. It's a deliberate choice. Build fast, work in any season, and weaponize foulness. Many dry moats bristled with sharpened stakes, thornbriars, and seeded caltrops, four-pointed ironjacks that always present a spike upward. The floor is rucked and riven with trenches and pits that foul cavalry and spill infantry. Keep off the grass in the Middle Ages means everything beneath your feet is a quiz written by a sadist. Think armor will save you? Plate is heavy. Spikes hook, and one bad tumble turns you into a serving platter for archers on the parapet. What makes the dry moat a genuine nightmare, though, isn't iron. It's biology. Without plumbing or modern sewage, many castles treated the moat as the all-purpose receptacle. Kitchen garbage, carcasses, gray water, sometimes human waste down it went. Every hard rain churned the mix like a spoon in a cauldron, blending sour rot, sulfur, and failed cabbage into a psychological weapon that hit before any arrow did. With the wind right, the smell reached you before the sight of the walls did, and it bent knees. The worst scenario isn't just falling into spikes. It's falling into spikes drenched in week-old soup of cabbage, slime, and latrine runoff. Open wounds plus contaminated sludge equals infection at medieval speed. The time-honored cure is a prayer. There are siege records of camps shifting farther back purely because stench sabotaged morale. Every extra yard wastes time and food for the besiegers. Meanwhile, defenders quietly toss in lime and ash, stir destiny with the kitchen schedule, and let the moat do the talking. To give pain some texture, defenders sometimes added something that looks harmless, bone splinters, and, on rare infamous occasions, snakes. In wartime, garrisons scavenged bones from kitchens and slaughter, and flung them down like a sack of glass. Splintered bone edges, cut skin, snap straps, snag buckles, and turn one man's fall into a domino crash. A horse that takes a sharp fragment to the frog is done. A knight on foot is suddenly a pedestrian in a meat grinder. Chroniclers even mention a Middle Eastern fortress that dumped snakes into its moat, the nastiest home defense system ever recorded. Bravery degrades fast when something cold and living slithers through the gap in your greave. Whether every detail is literal or part legend, the principle stands. Anything that makes an enemy hesitate, gag, or lose composure is a weapon. On a battlefield, smell and fear count as munitions. A plunge into the moat doesn't just risk your life, it can hang around your neck socially too. In the Middle Ages, falling into the moat wasn't only dangerous, it branded you. The running joke, only half a joke, was 3 baths, 2 fumigations, 1 week of prayer, before anyone let you sit near the fire again. Men who climbed out of the ditch were parked at the far edge of the camp circle, not shunned for honor but for olfactory assault. A single reeking soldier can unravel formation coordination nosedives when your squad is gagging. Birds and rats loved trash moats like they were banquets with free lodging. Attackers swatted at wings, kicked vermin off straps, and found the mythic silhouette of the heroic night curdle into grim slapstick. Even if you escaped, the smell stuck to mail and padding like shame. Castles didn't just hit with stone, they hit with humiliation. Step away from the ditch and back to the corridors. There's an invisible threat there. The walls could hear you. Those thick stone galleries often create natural echo chambers, turning the whole complex into an ancient microphone array. A whisper in one tower might swell clear as a bell in a corner you didn't suspect, simply because of how sound slips along curved surfaces and rebounds at oblique angles. A muttered insult in the bakehouse sometimes arrived, pristine at the porter's lodge. Medieval builders didn't write calculus, but they understood, say it softly, the wall carries. Round rooms are even trickier. A murmur at one focus can be heard perfectly across the arc, while the dead center remains oddly mute. Whether by happy accident or sly intent, such spaces functioned as wiretaps centuries before wires. Anyone who forgot this wrote their own confession with their own voice. In a castle, acoustics is a kind of authority. The one who understands it governs the narrative. Sometimes it wasn't accidental at all. Some features were built expressly to eavesdrop in plain sight. Acoustic quirks weren't always accidents. Certain builders intentionally shaped vaults, curved corridors, and domes so sound would race, rebound, and converge like light in a lens. You whisper in point A, and the listener at point B hears you as if you're in their hood. Gossip turns into a live broadcast with no courier. At Bodiam Castle and halls like it, the geometry let the lord hear what guests said near the entry long before they knew he was listening. That's medieval social media surveillance. Your feed isn't on a screen, it hangs from the rafters. Visitors imagine they steer the conversation when, in truth, the conversation's fate is wired into the curve of the ceiling. Architecture didn't just shelter politics, it orchestrated it. And of course, the servants, the castle's operating system, were the first to exploit the trick. Servants quickly mapped the building's sound routes and used them to harvest gossip and pass stories. The placement of a brazier, a candle stand, even a three-legged stool was rarely random. Nudge something a hand's breadth, and you catch a cleaner signal. The earliest leak didn't travel through a computer, it came from a scullery maid, standing perfectly still at the right corner of a stone passage. Many castles also had slim air shafts and inter-room channels. On the rolls, they're ventilation, but in practice they shuttle conversations from one space to another, like a stone megaphone. One attentive ear downstairs could understand what tempers upstairs were doing. That's why old advice says, don't talk secrets under a dome. It wasn't superstition, it was fear of physics. We've now crossed 30 facts and seen the truth up close. A castle is a bizarre duet between engineering genius and unashamed filth. Moats were mostly waterless, but full of everything else you never want to touch. Walls had no ears, but somehow listened. Drawbridges didn't merely rise, they smiled and sent you to the underworld in a single hinged laugh. Every block of stone is a decision. Make them slow, make them scared, make them tired, then make them quiet. Next episode, we look down beneath the floors. Ancient burials under the Great Hall, plague dead in cold cellars, and the living ecology that ran the walls from cats policing rats to falcons policing pigeons. Which zone do you want cracked first? The outer barbican or the gatehouse with murder holes that lie? Comment your target, share this with your favorite history nerd, and hit subscribe with the bell so you don't miss part 4. Castles as ancient graves. The most hair-raising secrets yet. We'll meet again where the stones tell stories and the smell needs no words.